Hi, this is IK Tutor, and here we have question number 23, which is another requested question. So reading the question, it's a word problem, okay? And we know how to deal with word problems. We just have to translate the word problem into an equation and then solve the equation for the unknown. But in order to do that, we have to actually determine what type of equation it is. Right? Now, there's four basic types of equations that we're going to be that you normally written in word problems on a HESI, right? Proportion, percent, and you'll have some solved ones. You have temperature equations, and you'll have I mentioned temperature, proportion, percent, and conversion. Okay, so you kind of have that in the back of your mind, right? Now, looking at this question, right, in order to tell what type of equation it is, you have to look at the numbers, right? And that's not just with this question; that's with all questions. Look at the numbers, and it'll tell you what type of question it is, right? If they're talking about comparing things, like the part out of a whole of one thing and a part out of a whole of another, that tells you that it's a proportion question. And you just have to figure out, set up, know what the proportion equation is. We're going to go over that in a second. So here we go. Let's read the question. Question states, a patient is receiving pain relief via a 1,000 milliliter IV bag solution. Okay. When the patient has received 300 milliliters of the IV solution, they have received 2.1 milligrams of morphine. Then it goes on to say how many milligrams of morphine were contained in the original 1,000 milliliter bag. Okay, so they tell us that 300 milliliters of the IV solution contained 2.1 milligrams of morphine. And they say, well, then how much? Now, when we talk about how much and how many, we'll get into that, but usually the words how, what, that's the unknown amount. So they're saying how many milligrams of morphine, so that'll be an X, is contained in the original 1,000 bags, right? So 1,000 milliliter bags. So let's go to the whiteboard and write out our equation. You see here we have 2.1 milligrams, that was in 300 milliliters, and we have the unknown amount, X milligrams, that was in 1,000 milliliters. So we need to figure out what the value of X is. We have to solve this for X. This is a standard proportion ratio equation. This is the first step. The way you do proportion ratios is, first step is you write out the equivalence of two fractions, which is what you have here, right? Right, equivalence of two fractions, right? And it's exactly what it sounds like. One fraction equals another, and one of the fractions for proportions, it's always going to be one fraction equals another, and one of the fractions is going to have an X near the top and the bottom, and that's exactly what we have here, right? And then the second step is we need to get an equation that we can solve, right? So we're going to cross multiply the tops and bottoms to get the equation that we can solve. Cross multiply to get the equation. And the last step, instead of the three-step process, is we're going to simplify and solve. Once we get the equation, we simplify and solve. And this is how we do any and all proportion ratio problems. So let's go ahead. We did the first step already. We wrote the equivalence of two fractions based on the information they gave us in the word problem, right? Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to cross multiply to get the equation. So we have 2.1 on the top times 1,000 on the bottom. That's going to give us 2.1. Well, let's write it on the other side. 2.1 times 1,000, right, equals, then we have X on the top times 300 on the bottom. So that's going to be 300X. Okay. Now, we have cross multiplied. This is step 2, and we got our equation. Now, the last step is we're going to simplify and solve. So, 300X equals 2.1 times 1,000 is just 2,100. And now we're going to solve this. How do we solve any equation? We focus on the variable side equal sign. We look at our variable, which is just a letter, and whatever operation is happening to it, we're going to do the opposite operation. Since we're multiplying by 300, we're going to do the opposite operation and divide by 300. And also, whatever operation we do on one side of the equal sign, we must do the same operation on the other. So we're going to divide the other side equal sign by 300 as well. We do that, 300x divided by 300 is 1x, which is just x. And 2100 divided by 300 is 7. So our answer is, originally there was 7 milligrams in the 1000 milliliter fluid solution. Okay, so I hope that helps. If it did, please remember to like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Have an amazing day.